Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the most anticipated games of 2024. Its first title from 2012 amassed a massive valor win when it launched, which to this day gets over 6,000 concurrent players on Steam. But does the sequel live up to the hype? I've been playing it since release and I personally love its presentation. Its realistic yet fantastic appearance looks modern without looking boring. From the vegetation-lush forests to the bustling towns and cities, it holds my attention with every time I start it up, all the way to the moment I put the control down for the night. I love the extremely detailed character customizer and how it effortlessly translates to its pawn system. Every party I've seen players put together feels unique yet intentional. The only question, which has seemed to gather a lot of negative attention, is performance. So, is it really that bad? I have tested this game on my i9 14900K and an RTX 4090, and here's what I found. We go into starter test at 4K. I'm going to show you basically the setting I've been using to play this game. We're not going to do too expansive of a test with different resolution and settings. We're just going to go for sort of the way I've been playing it and sort of explain how it performs as we go. You can see that we've got 22 gigs of VM available. However, we only use about 8.5, and this is with 4K at DLSS quality. I'm basically using the highest available settings with some optional settings, sort of, tweaked to I like it. I don't like sharpness too much, so it's kind of halfway, but it's not exactly a graphical setting. And you can see we actually do have DLSS on quality, like I mentioned, but we do have ray tracing. So if you're planning on playing with ray tracing, which I believe does enhance the image quite greatly. It's fairly demanding. I do recommend using DLSS. However, you can get like an average of sort of 10 to 20 FPS boost if you don't use ray tracing. And then just to show you the rest of the settings, we're using basically everything as high as it goes with all the optional extras here. They're not too demanding, to be quite honest. The most demanding settings are the texture filtering, the mesh quality, and the ray tracing. If you're not using ray tracing, you can also use ambient occlusion and anti-aliasing in these two settings and stuff. Anti-aliasing is disabled due to DLSS. So again, optional. However, I do think DLSS, even without the upscaler, DLAA is quite a good setting to use. And then we do have lens distortion, subsurface scattering, and motion quality on high as well. So yeah, let's get into the benchmark, shall we? Okay, so you can see we're starting off here with 60 FPS, just over there, sort of in the 70s. We are in the wilderness, so we're gonna start sort of walking around here first, and it's not too bad. You can see that the frame time is not great. It is kind of going up and down all the time. However, it doesn't feel too bad once it sort of settles, once you leave the town. So you get those occasional hiccups, and especially when you traverse in sort of bigger areas and loading in more assets, it can dip a little bit. But you can see it's all under control. We are being GPU maxed out in the wilderness, and it does look quite beautiful. Personally, I do really like the art style in this game. It's going for more a gothic / realistic aesthetic, which I really, really like. And the performance is honestly not too bad. It says it's using 25 gigs of DDR5 RAM. However, it's not strictly true. It's reserving that much memory, but it's only using about sort of 13 altogether. So you can get away with 16 gigs of RAM quite fine. I chose this area because it actually, even though it's quite open and there's not much going on in close proximity, it's actually one of the more demanding areas just because you can see so far into the distance and stuff, and obviously with the max settings, it can be quite demanding. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to just kind of run around a little bit here, and we're going to start FPS right here as we approach the town and get our averages. And then I'll sort of explain the issues that people have been having and seeing on their systems with towns and sort of more busy areas. It is a very beautiful game, but you can see as we're approaching the town and getting closer, we're getting those spikes in frame time, which don't feel too great. They're not the most awful thing, but obviously this is a slow-paced game. If it was a competitive game, it'd be borderline unplayable. So you can see at 1% lows actually dropping into the 30s as we approach the town, and it's not really in the 30s. It just feels like it because of the spikes. Most of the time you're gonna be hovering, above 60, above 70. I'm even hitting 80s here, but as we get closer to the town, our GPU is gonna actually be less and less utilized. And as soon as you get through the gate and all the NPCs start loading, this is where most of the issues I've seen people have been experiencing. So you can see immediately we dropped about 10 to 20 FPS, and it only gets worse. You can see the frame time graph is kind of all over the place at this point. The CPU gets more and more bottlenecked. As you can see, sorry, the GPU gets bottlenecked by the CPU, so the CPU becomes a bottleneck. And you can see that quite evidently on the top left, that it's no longer in the 99 percentage. It's now in the 80s, high 90s, mid 90s, but it never maxes out the GPU, which is very indicative of a CPU bottleneck. It's not the worst. You can see it's fairly stable. We are using DLSS quality, so we relieve in any GPU bottlenecks at this point, but the CPU does become a problem. The denser the area, the worse it's going to be. And you can see that over time, it actually sort of stabilizes a little bit. But as soon as you're about to, you know, load a bunch of new NPCs, which happens quite often, the NPCs kind of call in a very close proximity, it will drop again, especially in this main little square where there's, you know, not that much going on visually. However, on the CPU side, it's trying to load in a bunch of different NPC, a bunch of different things at the same time, and it does drop under 60 quite heavily, and for quite a while, you can see it kind of hovers around the low 50s. Is that a problem? It's not too bad, to be honest. I don't think it's a deal breaker. I still think this game is quite gorgeous and stuff, but you have to bear in mind that this is a high-end CPU and stuff, so this game definitely needs optimizing. You know, this engine was made for Resident Evil games. I think originally it was made for Resident Evil 7. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then it was sort of updated over the years and stuff, so it's not quite pulling off an open world just yet. But then bear in mind, this game is new. It's at this point, it's not even a week old, so I'm hoping there's going to be more optimizations. I'm hoping there's going to be more work going into this. And until then, you can definitely still enjoy it. I would recommend personally looking at your FPS. If you have a weaker system with a slightly weaker CPU, you can look it to 30. It doesn't feel that bad at 30 FPS. You will still hiccup in towns, but as soon as you go out into the wilderness, which is where you spend majority of your time, it will stabilize. So honestly, it's not as bad as people are making it out to be. You can optimize this game. It's not the most stable and you know, reliable experience, but it's better than a lot of the games out there. So let me share my final thoughts. This game is not perfect. It is one of the most punishing mechanics in recent RPG history that I've seen. The microtransactions, even though not ruining the experience, are unwelcome, and performance leaves a lot to be desired. And even with all that said, I strongly believe it is a game worth playing. Don't let a few hiccups deter you from enjoying this one. It might just become your new favorite game. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next one.